So today I'm going to be giving a presentation, The State of Avalanche in 2020. And 2020 has been an incredibly auspicious year for Ava Labs, the team, and for Avalanche, the network. We raised capital in multiple rounds, including a historically epic public token sale. We had multiple iterations of our network, including an incentivized testnet with an unprecedented number of participants. That culminated in us going live with our mainnet. And since our mainnet has been live, we have had just a humbling and awe-inspiring amount of support and outreach from our community and our strategic business partners. So as I mentioned, 2020 has been an incredibly auspicious year for Ava Labs and for the Avalanche Network. And I just want to express gratitude from myself and the entire team to everybody who's been a part of the adventure up until this point, and we really are just getting started. So, as I mentioned, we raised capital in multiple rounds, including a public token sale, which happened at the end of July, where we raised $42 million in 4.5 hours. And this actually followed right on the heels of our private token sale, which we had in June, where we raised $12 million, and that round was led by Galaxy Digital and Bitmain and some other wonderful folks. Whenever we had our public token sale, as I mentioned, the window of opportunity was only 4.5 hours, but there were some very interesting facts which we can tease out of that token sale. So the first is, despite the window of opportunity only being 4.5 hours, we saw participants from over 100 different countries represented. And so, of course, that's incredibly gratifying to the Ava Labs team, because we view Avalanche as the internet of finance. We are building a global financial network for the issuing and trading of all digital goods. And so it's incredibly gratifying to us, and it reinforces our intuition and our feeling that there is the need and the desire for a global internet of finance when we see over 100 different countries represented in our very, very brief token sale. So thank you so much to everybody around the world who was part of that. Secondly, something very, very interesting is that there was a person or a team of people who bought Avax using Ethereum tokens which had never been touched since the Ethereum Genesis block. And so what that means is there was a person or a group of people who took part in the Ethereum token sale way back in 2014, and they had literally never touched the Ethereum tokens, not one single time, until they unfroze them and bought Avax in our token sale. So if you were the person or the team that did that and you're watching this right now, I just want to extend gratitude to you and let you know that we did notice that internally. We got a great kick out of that, and it felt like a vote of confidence from a person or a team who knows their stuff, somebody who's been around long enough to have partaken in the Ethereum token sale and had the patience and the wisdom to have never touched their coins since then, and then to have moved them and invested into the Avalanche ecosystem. That was a huge vote of confidence for us, and it was very flattering to us. So thank you very much. And then many people have asked, why 42 million? Why not 43 million? Why not 41 million? Well, as some of you may know, 42, of course, is the answer to the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, of course. So we had multiple iterations of our network, including an incentivized testnet, which was Denali, where we incentivized the network with 2,000 AVAX to get a minimum of 1,000 full nodes validating. We wanted to test the network at scale, and we were able to do that. We crossed the 1,000 full node threshold. I believe ultimately we had about 1,038 full nodes validating. So that was very, very successful. And then we put the network through its paces on the Everest testnet, and we went live with our mainnet, and the long-running testnet, which lives besides the mainnet, is called Fuji. So one of the exciting things about going live with the mainnet is whenever we checked the statistics on the very first day, within 24 hours, we had around 300 validating nodes, and they had staked right shy of $1 billion US. And so that was hugely, hugely gratifying to the team, because I don't think you could have given the team a higher compliment at that exact moment than to see hundreds of validators with nearly $1 billion US staked on day one. The amount of vision and hard work and thought that has gone into the Avalanche network is truly monumental. And we understand that there's an opportunity cost when it comes to staking tokens, and so we are very grateful to the people who chose to stake close to $1 billion in the Avalanche network on day one. Again, hugely, hugely gratifying to the team. And we checked again. I checked again this morning before I started the presentation, and there were 542 validators with 227 plus million AVAX staked, and that is about 1.14 billion US dollars staked. So again, Avalanche is really this multi-dimensional, multifaceted jewel, and to get it polished to the right place where we were ready for it to go to mainnet was nothing short of a masterwork. And so I really do tip my hat in awe at Goon and Kevin and Ted and the absolute dream team they've managed to assemble at Ava Labs. I think that they have accomplished what pretty much every single startup founder wishes they could do, and that is to couple together a very, very potent vision, so the Internet of Finance, and bring that together with a radical innovation on a tech fundamental, so Avalanche Consensus, and then marry that together with a team which is just incredibly passionate, incredibly competent, and very hardworking and creative. And so all the incentives have aligned, and we have hit escape velocity, in my opinion, as a startup. And so congratulations to the team at Ava Labs, and I just want to say to the moon. And so for years and years, I have been saying that the blockchain has the potential to be as meaningful as the web and beyond. And so I wanted to take a brief moment to kind of unpack what I mean by that. I'm going to do 2 slides where I talk about web technology, but only so I can set the stage for my point here. So I'm going to go off on a slight tangent. Bear with me. I promise to bring it back to the blockchain technology in 2 slides. So the web had incredibly humble origins. It was created by one single individual, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. His name is Timble online. And he created it basically in his downtime. So he was an engineer at CERN, and his boss came to him one day and said, hey, we're going to have some downtime. Why don't you take that Next Step workstation that we got from Steve Jobs' new company over in Palo Alto, and why don't you prototype this worldwide network, worldwide web network that you've been talking about for so long? And so Tim Berners-Lee did exactly that. He prototyped the very first version of the World Wide Web on a Next Step computer, which I think is pretty cool. And his very first iteration of the web, he did not anticipate it being commercial in nature. He thought it was going to be a scientific network, and he envisioned academics and students and engineers all sharing data sets and documentation and manuals in this universally accessible space. And as I mentioned, he did not envision the web being commercial in nature. In fact, he didn't even have the ability to add a tag or any images, an image tag, I should say, to the very first iteration of the web. And it's worth mentioning that there were other networks which had come prior to the web. So there was the WAZET network, the Wide Area Information System. Pardon me. There was also, of course, Gopher, and there were BBSs. I played around a lot with BBSs in grade school and middle school. And then there was FidoNet, which was, I guess the way to think about it is a superset of BBSs. It tied together BBSs. And of course, there were other networks whose acronyms have been lost to the sands of time. But the web brought together the right mix of technology and licensing and ease of use and vision. And Tim Berners-Lee was the right guy at the right time, launching a network like the web from a place like CERN in the early to mid 90s was absolutely the right play. And so from the very first day that he released the web client and server, the web has grown exponentially, and it's never stopped. And the web has generated an unquantifiable amount of wealth. So not just money, but knowledge, which is far more valuable. And we know that wisdom is better than silver and gold, and we know that the pen is mightier than the sword. And so the web really represents the totality of all human knowledge available instantly and ubiquitously. And so it's clear that Sir Tim Berners-Lee and his creation, the World Wide Web, have been able to reach out and touch the lives of every single person on the planet, directly or indirectly, and have a radically positive impact within his lifetime. And so not only did the web have a indirect impact on my life like it did for everyone around the world, but the web actually had a very tangible and direct impact on my personal life. So when I was in college, Google sponsored me to be a member of the World Wide Web Consortium's HTML5 working group. And the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, is an organization which was created by Sir Tim Berners-Lee with the intention of having a group that could act as a steward for the web and a steward for the web stack. And so being a member of the HTML5 working group, I got an up close and personal experience to see what it was like for the creation of HTML5. And my time at the W3C was amazing. I learned a ton. There are two things which still stand out in my mind as being just vivid. And I have taken them with me to every single project and every team I've been a member of since. And the first one is just how web standards work. And so when you're dealing with a large, open, and permissionless network like the web and like the blockchain, the major stakeholders of this ecosystem all come together. In this particular case, that would have been Microsoft with Internet Explorer, Google with Chrome, Apple with Safari, Mozilla with Firefox, and then Opera was there with Opera. And these large stakeholders all come together and they contribute engineering resources and time and money so that these engineers can all come together and that they can iterate and flesh out the next version of this technical specification. And then all of the engineers go back and implement it in their respective browsers. And so that was the first thing I learned, which has stuck with me all these years, is simply how the web standards pattern was able to pull the web out of the dark ages of Internet Explorer versus Netscape Navigator, where every single web page had a little banner that said this page renders best in IE5, for example, and able to pull the web out of the dark ages and into the modern era of web standards and HTML, the living document. The second thing which stuck with me all of these years, and this applies to every single person who's listening to this. So if you hear this right now, this applies to you and your team. It only takes a handful of people, if they are incredibly passionate and appropriately empowered, to change the world and have a radical impact. And what I mean by that is the size of the HTML5 working group was never greater than a couple dozen people. And out of those couple dozen people, there were never really more than a handful or two, which were driving everything by their hard work and their passion for the space. And those handful or two of people on the HTML5 working group ended up just being hugely successful. So if you go back to when HTML5 was created, XHTML2 was the chosen one, and HTML5 was really created as a skunkworks project. And I checked just a couple days ago, and on the publicly accessible and indexable web, there are about 1.5 billion domains, and around 85% or so of those domains have HTML5 as their doc type. And so to go from a skunkworks project, basically, to end up nearly 85%, 1.2 billion or so out of the 1.5 billion publicly accessible domains running HTML5, to me, that just feels incredibly successful. And so to re-encapsulate that, it only takes a handful of people, if they are incredibly passionate and appropriately empowered, to change the world and have a really, really big impact. And so one things I like about what you see on the screen here is that on the right, you see a picture of myself, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, and my son, Solja. He appears to be grinding on a piece of pizza there. And what I like about this is simply that I believe Tim Berners-Lee is a historic figure. I believe he'll go down in history. You could argue that the web and hypertext is potentially as meaningful as Gutenberg and the printing press. And so I think it's really cool that my son will have a picture of himself when he gets older, being held by the creator of the web when he was a baby. But perhaps more importantly, on the left at the bottom, you can see my name highlighted in orange there. And so my time at the W3C ultimately culminated in them adding my name as an acknowledged contributor to the HTML specification. And this was really meaningful to me. This is probably the thing I'm most proud about in my career, simply because the web has had such a huge impact. To have my name associated with it, directly or indirectly, is really a great honor to me. But to bring it back to what I was talking about initially, which is, of course, is the blockchain, I had said that the blockchain has the potential to be as meaningful as the web and beyond. And I wanted to kind of tie that in with a little bit of context about the web. And so similar to the web, the blockchain has the potential to reach out and touch the lives of every single person on the planet and to have a radically positive impact within our lifetime. What the blockchain offers us, which the web does not, and which is incredibly powerful and unique in all of history, is it offers us the opportunity to decouple money and state. And so in the same way that the separation of church and state ended up being a very profound idea that had big implications, the separation of money and state is even more so profound of an idea, and it will have even greater implications. And that's because money drives the world so much today. And so if we were to have a separation of money and state, what I would expect to see are financial systems which compete against each other in an open marketplace, and then these battle-tested ideas and battle-hardened ideas through some form of Darwinian evolution and Darwinian competition, the very, very best ideas would rise to the top. And that is what we see already today in the cryptocurrency space, where we see this just fierce competitive innovation coupled with rapid wealth creation. And so we would expect to see that instead of on the micro scale with individual teams and companies and communities, we would flip that model. And we would see this at the macro scale, at the nation state level. And that would surely be profound, because we know for sure that the countries that have the greatest economic freedom also have the highest standards of living. So this is, you know, clean air and not corrupt politicians, that kind of thing. The countries that have the greatest economic freedom have the highest standards of living. So if we want to have a tangible impact on the lives of people all around the world and increase their standard of living, then we need to give them greater economic freedom. And one of the ways we can do that is by decoupling money from the state. And for the first time in history, we have the opportunity to do that using technology like the blockchain and platforms like Avalanche. And so Marshall McLuhan said, we become what we behold, we shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. And I really like that quote. One of these reasons the web is so successful, in my opinion, is the developer tooling and how it's licensed and how it comes bundled with the web browser. And there's a lot that the web did right about tooling. And so, of course, at Avalabs and Avalanche, we have an entire suite of tooling to empower developers to create unique financial products and decentralized applications. And the first on our list is AvalancheGo. So AvalancheGo is our primary full node, and it's the reference implementation of the Avalanche protocol. So today, if you're running Avalanche, you have either cloned this repo and built it and run it, or you're running a pre-built binary, which we supply, and these binaries were built from the AvalancheGo code base as well. And we have binaries available for Linux, Windows, and Macintosh. And AvalancheGo has everything needed to build applications for the Avalanche network. Of course, it has a Keystore, so you can create users and their associated public and private keys. It has an instance of the Avalanche virtual machine as the C chain, as the X chain, I'm sorry. It has an instance of the platform virtual machine as the P chain. It has an instance of the EVM as our C chain. And it is a incredibly high quality and idiomatic Go code base. It's undergone multiple security audits. So credit to Stephen and Dan and Aaron and the rest of the team that maintains AvalancheGo. It's an incredibly high quality piece of software. Next, we have Avash, which is the Avalanche shell. And you might think of this as our answer to Ganache. But as far as I know, Ganache is a simulator, whereas Avash is in fact an actual network running real instances of AvalancheGo. And this is used on your local network for testing. And when you fire it up, you can fire up as many instances of AvalancheGo as you want. And Avash does the hard work of assigning them all ports and assigning them all databases and plugging them into the right place in directory structures, etc. And what's really cool is you can automate large parts of this workflow using Lua. So for example, if when you fire up your development environment, if you want to have certain users, you can import private keys. If you want to create certain SEC or NFT assets, you can do that as well. And you can also send tokens to different users and have balances set up, and whatever you want, basically, you can automate. This is not for doing automation in the large. We have a framework coming that is for doing automation in the large. This is really for doing automation in the small. This is for whenever you're testing on your local machine and you want to have it set up in a certain way. And Avash is my daily driver. If my computer is open and if I am doing some type of development environment, there's a 95% chance I have Avash fired up with a 5-node staking network, which is a script we have out of the box. And I believe we support up to 15 nodes out of the box, and you can add more than that. So Avash is really great. If you're a developer, this should be a critical part of your workflow, and you should always test on Avash prior to testing on our Fuji testnet, and of course prior to launching anything on our mainnet. Next, we have AvalancheJS. AvalancheJS is our platform's JavaScript and web-focused library. It was created and is primarily maintained by the brilliant Colin Couchet. And it is a very, very high quality and idiomatic TypeScript code base. I think Colin has done an absolutely great job of writing a very, very high quality TypeScript code base. It allows you to create and sign transactions of many different formats locally. And so today, if you're running AvalancheGo and you have, for example, private keys on your AvalancheGo node, we consider that an anti-pattern simply because it's not safe to store private keys out on a live network. So a better practice would be to create applications and sign them locally using AvalancheJS. And we support nearly all of the transaction serialization that is supported in AvalancheGo. So if you want to create AVAX transactions, if you want to issue SecP tokens, if you want to issue NFTs, if you want to do cross-chain swaps between the X and the P chain and back, if you want to create subnets, if you want to add validators and delegators, all of this stuff you can do locally and in an offline environment using AvalancheJS. There's a couple other things we need to implement with regards to transaction serialization, but we have nearly 100% coverage, and the rest of it is on our roadmap, and it will be done ASAP. And then lastly, just test coverage. High quality code is incredibly important to us, and so we have the convention that anytime a person submits a pull request with new code, there has to be corresponding test coverage as well. So the test coverage of our code bases is always very high and will remain very high. Next, we have our faucet. So our faucet is if you need to get AVAX for testing. We have a web faucet you can go to, and it will give you X and C chain for testing on the Fuji network. What's really cool is you can also run the faucet on your local hosts. So if you're doing development environment, for example, with a local network, Avash, and you want to spin up a local instance of the faucet to give drips to your local addresses, you can do that. And a pro tip, inside the .in.example file of the faucet's GitHub repo, you will find two private keys. One of them is a base 58 check encoded private key, and then the other one is a hex encoded private key. And those are the whales of the local network. So if you fire up your own network using Avash, you can import those private keys into your Keystore, and you automatically have a bunch of local AVAX. And so that can be more convenient sometimes if you need a massive amount of AVAX and you don't want to go through a bunch of manual drips using the GUI. Next, we have our wallet, our web wallet. So as I mentioned, my time at the W3C really taught me that standards are critical for interoperability. And so we are big advocates of following any of the existing conventions and standards that exist in cryptocurrency space. And so two of them which we follow are BIP39 for 24-word mnemonics. And so this allows you to take the entropy, which underlies your private key, and to encapsulate it into a human-readable 24-word mnemonic. And these things seem deceptively simple. I've had many people feel like they're not secure using a mnemonic, but you can see there I have 115 quadrillion, and then that huge number, that's the number of potential different mnemonics when you're using 24-word mnemonics. It's absolutely astronomical. It's 2 to the 256. And so it's very, very secure, and it's an industry best practice. Secondly, we use BIP44 for the HD path, the hierarchical deterministic path. Again, this is an industry best practice for multi-currency and multi-account wallets, where an HD path is similar to an image path or a path in a file system. And every single layer of the path can have 4 billion children. It's like a branch of a tree. And every single one of those children can have 4 billion, and it can be infinitely nested. And so as you build out these layers in this HD path, it just becomes combinatorially explosive in numbers. And so the combination of BIP39 for mnemonics and then BIP44 for HD paths makes these HD wallets incredibly secure and safe to use, and they're an industry best practice. And so we have that here. Our web wallet also supports sending and receiving AVAX, as well as sending and receiving SecP, fixed and variable capped asset tokens, as well as non-fungible tokens, which is very exciting. And then you can also do cross-chain swaps between the X and the P chain and back. And then you can even stake tokens through a delegator or a validating node. And so credit to Imre, who has done an absolutely great job of building and maintaining this. Next, if you have a non-trivial amount of crypto, you should probably spend a lot of your time wondering about how you can keep it safe. And the industry best practice for that is a hardware wallet, where basically it's a specialized piece of hardware that provides complete isolation between your private keys, which are required to send your tokens, and between the world, which can sometimes be malicious, of course. And so earlier this year, we issued a grant through our Avalanche-X grant program to the Obsidian system folks, very, very professional team, who delivered us a Ledger hardware wallet. It also supports BIP39 24-word mnemonics, as well as BIP44 HD paths. You can generate a mnemonic using your Ledger app, and you can import it into our web wallets, and vice versa. Create a mnemonic on the web wallet and import it into the Ledger, and it generates the same public and private key pairs derived at the same HD paths, and you can send transactions. So that's incredibly powerful. And then it's been through multiple security audits, and it's currently making its way through the Ledger flow to where it will. Just this morning, we announced that it's live in the Ledger Live store via experimental mode. It will soon be out of experimental mode once it makes its way through their manual testing process. Next, we have an Explorer. So a blockchain is this living, breathing data set, which is always putting off fresh data. And you can think of an Explorer as kind of akin to a search engine. Basically, it allows you to search and learn about the data on the many different blockchains. And so on our Explorer, you can search all of the different assets that were created and their genesis creation to find out, how many were created, what addresses created them, etc. You can also plug in transaction IDs. So you can paste an address or a transaction ID into the search field, and it will return you everything about that address, all of its assets, its current balance, how many staked tokens, how many locked tokens, and then its list of transactions. You can plug in a transaction ID, and it will show you everything about that transaction, including when it was spent, how much was spent, the inputs, the outputs, the time, etc. And then you can also check out the information on validators and delegators. So you can see exactly which nodes have staked, how much they've staked, for how long they've staked, and you can see people who are actually delegating funds to those nodes. This is created by Momo and Tyler. It's also backed by a code base called Ortelius, which is like an indexer, also very, very high quality. And then lastly, in our ecosystem of tooling, we have the Avalanche-X Moonshot Accelerator. So this is our grant program, and this is for ideas that are incredibly audacious, akin to putting a woman on the moon, for example. And so we have a wish list, which is a distributed exchange, non-custodial lending, stablecoins, synthetics and derivatives, and a volatility index, but we don't want to box you in. So we want this to be stuff not yet imagined. So if you have a crazy, audacious idea, please present it to us, and you might get funding through our accelerator. So very quickly, Michael Jordan says, talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. And I'm a big believer that if you want to change the world in a radical way, you need an amazing team. And it's not just the team you work with every day. It's also your strategic and business partners. And we have some amazing partners. So first, we have Chainlink. They're a decentralized Oracle network, and they allow smart contracts to securely interact with off-chain data feeds, such as web APIs and traditional bank payments. And we're working with Chainlink to integrate their price and their data feeds into our platform so that developers can build smart contracts without limits using the Avalanche network and the Chainlink price and data oracles. Next, we have Polyant Games. This is a very exciting partner. They're an investment firm focused on NFTs and gaming, and they're building an NFT distributed exchange on Avalanche, and it's going to feature in-game currencies, in-game tokens, and then their NFT adjacent tokens from their portfolio startups and partner networks. They recently had a token sale, so congratulations to them and best of luck. Next, we have Avascan. I'm a huge fan of the Avascan team. I love these guys and gals. They're awesome. Their work is incredibly high quality. They have a blockchain explorer, which allows you to check the different assets, plug in transaction IDs, see inputs and outputs, as well as validators and delegators. We also have Vscout, which is an analytics tool for exploring Avalanche subnets. So this is like a blockchain explorer, but it's more focused on subnets. And what's really cool is they have a rewards calculator. So if you were doing staking and you want to get a sense of what your rewards will be, you can use their calculator. We have Whiteblock, which is a security and performance company. They have a Genesis platform, which enables the configuring of hundreds and thousands of AvalancheGo nodes. So we can simulate latencies and bandwidth constraints and other network characteristics to do stress, load, and security testing. My time is up. I need one more minute to breeze through these. Next, we have Bilira. This is a Turkish stablecoin. It's minted at the time of deposit, issue upon identity verification. It can be redeemed for fiat currency, and it can be transferred in and out of the network using the Bilira platform. We have Magic, which is passwordless logins. So you can click on a link in your email and you'll be securely logged into your application. Their SDK will soon support Avalanche to enable developers to provide passwordless logins to Avalanche applications. And then lastly, we have Tesseract, which is a Swift SDK, which will enable Avalanche Web3 and Avalanche integration into all of Apple's native platforms like iOS, macOS, tvOS, and watchOS, etc. So I breezed through that very quickly. There's a lot I can go to in detail. Thank you so much to the team for having me. I encourage you to reach out to me on any of these ways. You can hit me up on Twitter or Telegram at CGCardona. And you can also email me at gabriel@avalabs.org. As I mentioned, I'm the developer evangelist, and my job is to help encourage and inspire and on-ramp amazing developers into our ecosystem. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel to reach out to me personally. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate it.